Back to Reverend Glenn. Welcome, Reverend Glenn.
Good morning, everybody.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, we got that out of the way.
Yes.
And by the way, just in case we do have a faulty connection anytime this morning, this talk is available on Teacup Philosophy sometime later today in its entirety and recorded on a separate device, so it'll be complete. And I'm having a special treat this week. We are puppy sitting for a friend's dog, which is about the same age as ours, and the two of them are having a ball together. And you may hear them from time to time because this is a hardwood floor, and I've left the door open so they can come in and visit with me since I'm here by myself this morning. Okay, just in case that happens. They seem to keep coming in for an affirmation of love. So I have to.
Oh, and you still didn't find that one who disappeared?
No, that one we've had to say goodbye to. It's
You write her off.
never came back.
He's in the right place.
Yeah, and oddly enough, our neighbor who lives behind us a couple days ago came over and said, "Are you guys missing a dog? We found this little black and white dog," and we're like, oh, "No!" But it wasn't her. It wasn't her. It was somebody else. So anyway, well, on to the subject of this morning's talk. Onward, spiritual soldiers. I wonder where that came from. Let's see. Well, it came because it has been disappointing to see so many people among us as we watch the news and talk to our friends and family desiring to resurrect the past as a model for the future. And it's not just that they want to go back to happier times. I'd love to be a kid again and not have to worry about all the things that, that adults have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But it's become downright frightening to now see so many not only desiring a return to the past, but wanting to go there with every intention of changing sides. Now, that just opened up a whole stream of thought, and it's going to spill out here as a story, so just bear with me, you know how I am. A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, the people had fallen into a state of common despair. Technology had leapfrogged the populace from a simple agrarian culture to runaway industrial in little more than a single generation. Children born to open-air pursuits in pastoral, rural countrysides found themselves toiling away in the like of dark, stifling factories, poorly lit mines, patriarchal office buildings, and rough, often deadly oil fields. Sailors who once stood watch on mast high above the ocean sea found themselves shoveling coal into a hellish maw deep within the stinking bowels of cold iron ships, seeing neither sky or sea for days on end. Disposable people toiling for starvation wages to enrich a handful of robber barons, investors whose only goal was to grow rich and powerful. Rich for the sake of being rich. Then, having become rich, fighting among themselves to become richer. Because untempered by spiritual principle, the taste of money is intoxicating beyond imagination, and the lure of power overwhelming. Blinded by the meteoric speed of their evolution, the people were unable to recognize the effects these social changes inflicted upon their spiritual consciousness. A journey that once took weeks or months was reduced to days, then hours in a single lifetime. Lives that once flowed in sync with nature's rhythms were suddenly chained to the whims of a soulless clock. Time was no longer measured by the sun's progress across the sky and the phases of the moon, but by a mechanical tick, tick, tick that knew neither light nor dark, parent nor child. In the rush to acquire, the value of relationships diminished. Tribes pitted against each other were distracted from recognizing the root causes of their despair, each so preoccupied with just trying to survive on a few scraps offered up in return for their labor. They became easily susceptible to manipulation and abuse. Religion offered some comfort in the guise of a lamb, promising a better tomorrow as reward for obedience today. Obey your masters, for they alone know what is best for you, and heaven awaits you when this miserable existence is at last mercifully extinguished. The people were too desperate to see the wolf's fangs under the sheep's skin. Too late did they recognize its claws ripping at their limbs. Traditional churches had acquiesced to the Baron's petitions, realizing survival meant offering up to Caesar that which is Caesar's to claim. Better to be in league with the devil than risk annihilation, or worse, relegation to the ranks of irrelevance. And so the downward spiritual spiral began. This group pitted against that group, and we all know who is really to blame. If only we could stop those people from infringing on us. And the big one, my God is the only true God. Any and every physical difference was exploited to drive a wedge between neighbors. Rifts between clans were fueled rather than fixed. Someone else was always to blame, obviously, because they embraced the devil. Armies were raised and fielded to establish the one true God once and for all, and the barons grew richer selling the tools of war, weapons, food, medicine, blankets, boots, and most importantly, the truth. The truth became whatever the barons said it was, and religion sold that manufactured truth like selling candy on street corners. Freedom of choice, humanity's most valuable and misunderstood divine gift, was being sacrificed for the illusion of order, peace, and security. Spirituality wasn't dead, but its flame was flickering, its light visibly dimmed. Now, whether directly as I am, or now separated by a generation or two, each of us is a product of what has been dubbed the greatest generation. The greatest generation refers to that slice of human history whose life spanned across the Great War in the early 20th century, enjoyed the rapid economic expansion and some would say meteoric moral decay of the Roaring '20s, endured the inevitable Great Depression, and most importantly of all, defended democracy by holding the line against autocratic domination on multiple fronts through the mid and latter decades of the century. The greatest generation drew upon the last vestiges of a common consciousness, untainted by the chaotic evolution from a pre-industrial to a post-agrarian society. Faced with an unconscionable future where order, peace, and security would be paid for by the death of individual liberty, the greatest generation stood as one against the tide destined to set human evolution back to medieval grades, crippling advancement of our common consciousness for millennia to come. For an all too brief time, it seemed the work was done. Once again, humanity settled into its rapid pace of discoveries, technological advancements, and social upheaval. Business as usual in the spiritual realm. Lessons of the past having been forgotten and paved over, it is as if there is buyer's remorse setting in. It turns out democracy requires work. It requires everyone to educate themselves, to recognize truth from fiction, and own up to their own contributions to their experiences. Oh my, where have we heard this before? Traditional religions have established a hierarchy of authority, a top-down chain of power that dictates what its followers can think about anything it chooses to control. They profess to follow an established text, ubiquitously cast in stone, whose infallibility goes unquestioned, yet seems to fluidly evolve with the whims of whoever holds power in the moment. Science of mind understands how spirituality works and teaches us straight up that being spiritual requires work. It requires everyone to educate themselves, to recognize truth from fiction, and own up to their own contributions to their experience. Is it any wonder so many are regretting their buy-in to democracy as the form of government chosen to lead the common consciousness into the future? Wouldn't life be so much simpler if all we had to do is just let someone else dictate what we should believe and let it go at that? Wouldn't life be so much simpler if every time the manure hit the oscillating atmospheric agitator, some power from on high told us who to blame for our troubles? Who the next devil du jour should be? How does that poem by Martin Niemöller end? And then the day came when they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Going back in time and changing sides is foolhardy at best. The energy that creates a situation can never lead us out of that situation. The fear and loathing, mistrust, dehumanization, and pointless hatred employed to drive us apart, to empower the few, cannot bring us together, cannot buy us order, peace, or security. False prophets set us against each other, then claim they alone can save us. Their aim is to create such fear among us so we lose any sense of boundaries when it comes to protecting our own. Total annihilation of the other becomes acceptable over seeking common ground where foundations can be laid that allow multiple paths to develop in parallel. Spiritual living requires a mindset that says, I would rather be nailed to a cross or face a hungry lion with only my faith to defend me than deny my spiritual self. There is nothing easy about living a spiritual life in a secular world until we have accepted our spiritual nature without reservation. The teacher Jesus reportedly could have walked away from the crucifixion of free man. He could have stood before the temple priest and proclaimed for all to hear, "Kidding! I was only kidding. Of course, I recognize these wise and principled elders as our only purveyors of truth. And the Romans, best guys I ever met, never had an argument with any of them. I'm just a simple carpenter, can't even read, let alone know anything about anything that can't be shaped by a blade or pegged together. The example of his story affirms the character required to remain spiritual when challenged. The willingness to take the cross and defend the truth. Rosa Parks, in a later life interview, was quoted as saying, "People say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that isn't true," she said. "The only tired I was tired of giving in. A spiritual soldier does not give in. Our duty to ourselves is to immerse ourselves in spiritual understanding, so immerse ourselves in spiritual understanding that no challenge can derail us from our spiritual path. Our duty is to tap into that best part of our common consciousness where the spiritual principles glow strong and hot and bend that consciousness ever closer to spiritual bliss, recognizing the force required is nothing more than the force required to change our mind. We control our own thinking. We are blessed with freedom of choice. We choose to be guided by spiritual truth and reject without prejudice anything out of alignment with spiritual principle. On our spiritual path, we often believe it is enough to accept responsibility for our own thinking. A spiritual soldier has moved to the next level, not just adjusting their own thinking for the sake of their own happiness, but actively moving to educate the unenlightened, to shed a light where the flame has lost its intensity. In a world where the idea of going back in time to change sides is infecting an apathetic populace, speaking out, speaking up, and actively calling out misinformation is living our spiritual truth. Spiritual truth is the only truth. There is no alternative truth. And a spiritual soldier knows no amount of saying there is can change it. Spiritual soldiers do not set out to conquer ignorance, but challenge it on every front. Spiritual soldiers know when we force separations between us, it is as if we are attempting to drive a wedge into water. In spirit, we are inseparable, so the attempt is simply burning energy with no hope of success. These are the fires of hell, and we are trapped within them by our own choices in this life. A lot of fears and apprehensions stem from not understanding each other. In that vein, let me lay a few things out for you in this year-end holiday season. As the year winds down and we enter this holiday season, I, as a product of Christian upbringing, am likely to greet strangers with a general happy holidays in recognition of the fact that, not necessarily knowing them, I do not know what holidays they are likely to subscribe to, and it is the holiday season. You know, that season when so many holidays occur. On October 29th, 30th, and 31st, a more narrowly directed Happy Halloween may be reasonably substituted, given the proximity of that hallowed day. And around the end of November, Happy Thanksgiving is my likely salute. Dare I say Happy Hanukkah to someone I know to be Jewish, as that celebration rolls around, even though I do not personally partake. And yes, I might even let slip a heartfelt Merry Christmas on that day, as that day dominates our calendars. As a spiritual soldier exercising freedom of choice, I can personalize my greetings to fit our social fluidity. And as a spiritual soldier shouldering responsibility for my own experience, I am not flummoxed by someone else's misapplication of their greeting to me. Want to wish me a Merry Christmas? Fill your boots. I accept your greeting with the love it is intended to express. I am not offended. Wish me a happy Kwanzaa if you like. Again, not a holiday I personally celebrate, but so what? I still accept the love. Are you a dyed-in-the-wool happy holidays person? That just shows me how inclusive you are. Bravo. Happy holidays, whatever you are celebrating. Do so with love and joy. Adrienne Marie Brown, writing in Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good, says, there is no way to repress pleasure and expect liberation, satisfaction, or joy. Now, people who allow themselves to get upset because they think their holiday is being co-opted by generalized recognition of non-exclusivity are missing the whole point of their holiday. A holiday we know to be historically misplaced given the events going on in the telling of the tale, a date chosen not for its literal accuracy but to supplant the pagan festival celebrating the winter solstice, the return of longer daylight. A holiday whose very existence celebrates a new direction for our common consciousness, foregoing past misdirections and embracing love as the guiding principle for our free choices, recognizing our unity with spirit and our power to use it. Allowing ourselves to become upset because others do not fit into the molds we expect them to is expecting others to make us happy. That's not their job. My happiness is my responsibility. It is not the government's responsibility. It is not the church's responsibility. It is not my neighbor's responsibility. My happiness is my responsibility. I do not need to go into the past to change my future. I can change my mind right now. I do not need everyone else to bend to my wishes to be happy. I appreciate it, though, when they stop expecting me to bend to theirs. And I appreciate your attention this morning and wish you all a most loving and joyous Bubble Wrap Day, because it's coming sooner than you think. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Glenn.